Are we working now? I guess we're working now. Here we go. All right. Welcome back. Let's do this again. Okay, guys, welcome back. Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. It was just, and sorry about my gray hairs getting all crazy. Look at that. Check that out, man. This is what happens when you get old. Good Lord. Look at those gray hairs. Why did that happen? I was 20 yesterday. Anyway, okay, so back to this. This is a new bowl that I got out of the kiln the other day. This is pretty cool. I'm very pleased with the way this thing turned out. You can see on the inside, we got this really nifty celadon glaze, which works out really, really well. And tapped it, and I threw it the other day. I'm so pleased because it's a nice big bowl. I mean, look at, huge, fluffier than I once was. But anyway, we won't talk about that. But in any case, check that out. I mean, that turned out really, really well. I like the way that the texture turned out. So this is sort of like a darkish green. Celadon is really, really awesome glaze that on a porcelain clay body, which is a very, very pure white, no grog in it. And what do we remember from last week? Grog is previously fired ceramic, and it's been ground up and it's like sand, and it helps you to be able to build bigger sculptural pieces and also make stoneware pottery. But porcelain doesn't have any. And it turns out to be this really, really clear, very lovely, lovely clear-ish green on something of that nature. But this one I used a glaze that's called 811 Buff, and I love 811 Buff. It is possibly one of the best throwing clays I've ever used. It comes from a company called IMCO, which is up in Northern California, and it's in Florin, I believe, Sacramento area. And it's just, it's very elastic. It's very forgiving. You can just beat the daylights out of it when you're throwing, and it just has greatest results. So that's this really, really cool bowl. And then I threw another bowl that's smaller, also out of the 811 Buff. It filled in the stamps I made a little bit more than I really would have liked. I would have liked to get more detail. I'm waiting for the airplane to leave. I would have liked to have gotten a little bit more detail from my stamps, because this is actually a really cool leaf pattern that I made for the stamp, but it's still pretty darn good. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. So that thing is pretty doggone good. Okay, so there's that. And then let me see if I can show you the picture again, because my signal started going out. Here's the picture I made. This is really groovy. Very, very pleased. It's a little bit heavier than I would have liked. The thing about making pictures is that you have to take into consideration a number of different things. First of all, you have to remember that it's got to fit really well in the hand. You got to be able to really grab a hold of it and have it be nice and secure here. And then you have to remember what the center of gravity is going to be, and how comfortable is it going to be to pour from. You know, that's a really, really important factor. Also, you have to try and throw it a little bit lighter, or trim it a little bit lighter before you fire it, because what you're going to wind up doing is you're going to wind up putting liquid in it, and liquid adds weight, right? And so we don't want this to be like a 10-ton pitcher when it's got lemonade or tea or margaritas or whatever in it. So this one, I haven't been throwing pitchers for a while. And I'm really kind of getting back into throwing. I was out of practice for a while because I lost my studio is basically what happened when I moved from Northern California back down here to Los Angeles. And so I was just out of practice for about 1.5 years. So I'm getting back into my groove, which is really, really nice. I just love the way this thing breaks. This is just really awesome. Let's see if I can get a little focus on that. That just, it's unfortunate you can't quite see the glaze as well as I would really like you to see it, because it's a little bit shiny and the lighting is a little bit funky, but it really did turn out well, if I do say so myself. Yeah, so I did a celadon on the inside of this, and then I did an oribe, O-R-I-B-E, oribe on the outside, because this particular oribe, for whatever reason, it's not really all that food safe over at the studio that I use. And so the celadon that's on the inside is food safe. And since nobody's going to be licking the outside of the pitcher, one hopes, you never know, people are strange these days. I can actually use the oribe on the outside for a really kind of nifty, result. So that's all really great. So now what we're going to wind up doing here, my friends, is we're going to start talking about something that is really important when you make mugs and cups and stuff of that nature. And what that is, set this back here a little bit. What that is this funny thing called handles. You need a handle. It's just how things work. You need a handle. Get a handle on it. What? So I'm going to do my little Mr. Rogers thing. Oh my goodness. Look at this. It's just spinning. We're spinning. No, that's just a shame. All right. Just put that there. Really funky. This be funky. Okay, I'll stabilize it. So I'm going to do my Mr. Rogers thing. I'm going to put my my apron on here, my intensely sexy apron that I got from Clay Dog Studios over on Etsy. I always like giving them a little bit of a plug, and no, they don't pay me for this, but I really like their aprons. Pottery apron is pretty cool. All right, so last week we made a couple of mugs, and before I start making handles and all of that, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do some trimming. So let's see what we can do about getting this adjusted so you can see me and we can talk about trimming a little bit. I've set most of my stuff up here, but oopsie, let's not crash the laptop, kids. That in the background here, you can see in the background there's a painting that I've been working on. I just haven't had enough time to finish it yet. I really want to, though. I'm thinking about making some prints from that and making some greeting cards and stuff from that. So we'll see how that all goes eventually. Okay, so I've got my wheel because my situation here is that I have to be sort of somewhat portable. I put my wheel on top of a piece of plywood, which is on top of a furniture dolly, which actually works out real well. Anyway, trimming. I'm going to get out my two favorite trimming tools here, and let's start with those. There's a ribbon tool and there's a trimming tool. So these are things that are very commonly used. You've got two sides to the ribbon tool. See that? And then you've got this handy dandy tool here, which is also a trimming tool. So I'm going to throw those down there, and these are actually pretty good. I made the bottoms a little bit thinner this time. Let's see. So I'm not going to really do any trimming on this, but what I am going to do. I am what I am. What I am going to wind up doing is I'm going to smooth this down because you can see the little area here. Sam, get out of the plants. My God. What? Don't give me that look. Don't you look at me in that tone of voice, dog. Dog. Are you going to go get me that ball? That's crazy. Crazy dog. Can you get me that ball? I'm going to smooth this down with my metal rib here, which actually kind of serves to compress the bottom. Then what I'm going to do is I had started last week to do a little stamping, but it was just a teensy weensy bit too wet still. Where are we? Yeah, that's much better. Hopefully it's not going to mess me up here and being a little too dry. Let's see. That's not right. And obviously I don't want to punch through this. There we go. That's a little better. I like doing stamping. I'm like totally on the stamping kick right now because it's just like adding the texture to my pieces. It just makes them a little bit more interesting. Makes it a bit more interesting. And some of you are going, well, God, I hope it gets more interesting because watching you stamp clay is kind of like watching the grass grow. Well, kids, this is part of what it takes to be a potter. This is what it takes to create art and practical things for you to enjoy using. And I really enjoy doing this a lot. I like sharing my work with people and really like knowing that some people use my work for everyday stuff. You know, it's their favorite coffee mug or their favorite teapot or, you know, whatever it happens to be that I made for them. And that just gives me a lot of satisfaction. I have to say, it just gives me the happies all over. Are we still here? We're still here. All right. Let's took this down just a hair more. There you go. Oh, and by the way, just so you get an idea of what this looks like, this is the stamp that I made. It's pretty easy. And this is all made from polymer clay. Let's see. It's going to focus on that. This is all made for polymer clay because I didn't want to actually wait for the studio that I work with to fire because they just they don't have enough volume to fire as often as I would have because their kilns are actually quite a lot larger than the kilns that I used to have. So it takes quite a lot more work to actually fill those kilns, and people don't want to, you know, fire their kilns off when they're not even full yet. So, which is totally understandable. It's just a waste of energy. Plus, it doesn't end up firing your stuff quite properly. All right, so we've got this. This is still a little bit wet, a little bit how shall I say, still a little bit on the damp side of leather hard, I guess is the best way to put it. So you can kind of see here how that looks after it got stamped, and the form's not too tweaked out. I may just wind up, there's that. I may just wind up doing a little repositioning of that. But overall, I think I'm pretty pleased with that. That looks pretty good. And then the bottoms I make, actually on purpose, I make the bottoms a little bit thicker. And that's because it keeps things warm longer. I really kind of dig that whole thing. I'm going to take one of my little rubber ribs and just compress things a little bit here. Yeah, that's pretty cool, if I do say so myself. And when I keep talking about, it's really funny. The smart potters have got this thing called a stamp with their mark on it. Some people call it a chop and all of that. But I have been too lazy to create my stamp yet, which I really should get around to doing. It's not like I'm not capable of doing it, but y'all are going to have to just tolerate the fact that I do not have my stamp on it. Let's do a little stamp paper. Changed my mind. And I'm just going to sign my name in the bottom of this. It's actually Shell Hawks Creations, shockingly. As you probably guessed from the t-shirt I had up later, or earlier, I should say. What's today's date? 9th. Yeah, I always put the date on the bottom of my cups so I can kind of keep track of them. Somewhere in my storage space, I still have some stamps that I actually got their metal letters for typesetting that I picked up off of eBay. And so it was a full set of metal letters and numbers, so that what I could do is have the date stamped, and then what I would do is I would put a number on the bottom and a little code for myself, so I knew that this was the first mug I made in whatever year it happened to be. So that really actually worked out well for me, just to keep things sort of organized, I guess is the best word for it. So now we get into the fun part, and the part that I think potters get teased for the most, and that is pulling a handle. Pulling a handle invariably causes those of us with the minds of a 13-year-old boy to giggle. Yeah, we giggle about this stuff. Why? Because we're juveniles. It looks pornographic. It's just how it is. We potters, well, you know, we're just dirty people that way. So I'm going to kind of start this off a little thicker because this is a slightly larger piece here. And if I'm rolling anything out with, if I'm using a coil or something like that, if I'm making a coil, what I will usually do, tilt that down just a hair more. What I usually do is I will use one hand, and I'm doing this really gently because what you wind up doing is you wind up getting these really funky flat sides to it. And I will just do this very gently across. Usually, actually, I do this on a plaster table, or I'll do it on the wood on the table that I'm using right now because I don't have my plaster table any longer, unfortunately. And since I'm here at my folks' place until I can find a place for myself, I'm not going to insist that my folks change around their entire house just for me, because that's a little bit on the inconsiderate side. So what I'm doing now is I'm sort of making this a little bit more handle shaped. And what this also does a bit is it helps to compress things a little bit. And what I will generally do is I will usually pull a handle off of the pot itself. You can always pull handles beforehand and let them dry up a little and then attach them. That's another technique that people use. I'm not going to show that one today. I might show that another time for maybe like a pitcher handle or something like that. This time I'm going to attempt this. It's a little bit more difficult because you have to really pay attention to how much water you're using. Sometimes I have bad luck and it'll pull away from the pot, or I should say the cup, while I am pulling the handle, and you'll see in a minute what I'm talking about. And right now what I'm doing, I'm just trying to change this shape just a little teensy bit so it looks a little bit more interesting and elegant when it's coming out of the mug. And you're like, Jesus, Shelly, can you maybe hurry this up a little bit? No. The answer is no. No, I can't. Because it needs to be very carefully thought about. While you're assembling things, you need to consider actually a number of different things with handles. You have to consider if you're going to make this for somebody who is a whole hand mug holder, you have to consider if it's maybe a 1, 2, 3, or a full hand handle that you're going to make. You can make all of them. Some people love cups that have enough room for their big fist to get in there and just grab that cup of coffee in the morning. And some people are more delicate and they like a little one, a one-fingered handle. So these are things that you just sort of have to consider. Now, this is going to be interesting because I have not worked with pulling handles with this particular clay before. So we'll see how this all goes. This should be fun. So what I'm doing here is I'm compressing all of these little edges that go around here. Let's see here. I'm compressing this so that they don't crack. And I'm shaping it a little bit. And unfortunately, this shape is not quite like I want it. So do that. And kind of the more I do here, I know this is like people who are not potters, this is probably just about as tedious can be, but it's all a part of the process of making something that doesn't look like it came out of Bed Bath & Beyond, right? Right. Just trust me on this one. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of decide which area I want this to attach to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that area with my handy dandy needle tool. And I'm going to take an educated guess as to where I want my bottom piece to go, since it's not going to match up quite exactly. And then I'm going to get my water set up here. And I'm going to use a very, very small amount of water. Tiny amount of water. And I'm going to dampen this clay here in a couple of spots in order to make a little bit of slip right here on this so that the handle has something to attach to. And then I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to score this. And what scoring does is it disturbs the platelets of the clay. Creates a little bit of a frictiony spot for it to grip to. It's like glue, you know? Isn't this exciting? And then what I'm going to do is the same thing on the other side, just like the slightest little bit of water. I'm actually going to sort of draw a little bit around on the inside of this handle, because if I start scoring and slipping too close to the edge, what's going to happen is that when it goes into the firing, it's going to want to split right at the edges. And that is not the thing we want to have happen. We don't want any split handles at all. And that also happens, by the way, if you add too much water to the join when you're putting your handle together with the body of the cup or the mug or whatever it happens to be. All right, we're good to go on this thing. Oh, wish me luck, kids. Let's see. So I'm going to take this very gently. I'm going to wiggle it on here. Attach this little bad boy. And as you can kind of see, this clay is able to kind of support itself. It's not so wet that it's all floppy as of yet, which is absolutely perfect for what I need right now. You don't want to kind of have this thing flipping around right now because it's going to make this area right here very weak, this area here. Now, here's the part where it could start pulling off right away. We'll see. Let's hope that it doesn't do that. Let's hope it cooperates. Here is pottery porn in the making. So I kind of dampen this everywhere, and then I start pulling. With this, since I've actually sort of formed the edge of the bottom part that's going to go to the bottom part of the mug, I'm not actually pulling this to all the way to the end. And I'm very firmly doing this. Well, I shouldn't say very firmly. I'm somewhat firmly doing this, but not too hard. And what I'm going to do while it's still here is I am going to take my finishing sponge, which I just had. There it is. I'm going to take off some of the slip. I'm going to clean up this bottom spot a little bit. And then I'm going to attach this bad boy at the bottom. And since this handle is wicked crooked, we are going to straighten it out a bit. As we attach this bottom bit. And we're also going to clean this up a little bit more right through here. And I just sort of gently tap it when I need to sort of get this evened out a little bit. One of the things I have to say that I really deeply miss is my torch, and I guess I'm going to have to suck it up and get myself another one because God knows where it is in storage. You know how that goes if you've ever had a storage space. Because what I'm used to doing is taking my torch and setting the handle just a little bit so that it'll hold its shape where I want it to hold its shape. And you have to be very careful if you use a torch, because obviously you don't want to set your house or your wheel on fire or anything of that nature. But also, what can happen with that is it can dry the clay way too quickly. And what ends up happening is that the clay itself, if it dries too fast, is going to wind up cracking. And that is not what we want at all. There we go. That's a little prettier. And this little thing is like a finishing rubber. This is not my favorite one, though. Let's see if I can find that. In my bag of tricks. Yes, I can. Look at that. These things are really, really great for smoothing out clay while it's still wet. You've got two ends. You've got this nice kind of flat end, and then you've got this rounder end. The round end, and then the flat end. Kind of angled and stuff so you can get in there. And that really helps to clean up little edges and stuff, make it look prettier. This is a somewhat firm rubber. And this helps with seams, smooth out little seam areas and stuff. I really like using it. It's one of my faves. Another reason you don't want to, well, I think I mentioned this earlier and I probably didn't finish my sentence because I got distracted by shiny things. However, here we are again. Um, you don't want to use too much water on this because you don't want it to dry differently from the rest of the clay body, because then it starts pulling away and cracking. Um, and then it's not, I mean, depending on how bad the crack is, it's not a situation usually where you have to just pitch the whole mug and start all over again. Um, there's a really handy little fix for that, and that is, of all things, and you can only pretty much do this with stoneware clay. Um, and what that is vinegar. Vinegar has got an acid content that allows the clay to just sort of re-adhere to itself. If you've got a situation where, for instance, your handle starts cracking right along the join and all of that. So, even if it does happen like that, generally speaking, you can rescue it. But it's better if it doesn't crack in the first place. So we just really need to remember to try and not use too much water when we're joining things. All right. I have to admit, this is not the most gorgeous handle I have ever done, and I have no excuse for myself, but that'll do, pig. That'll do. And I've made it so that somebody with a bigger hand can get in there. Yeah, I think that'll work out just fine. Yeah, I think that'll work. Yeah. And once this handle sets up a little bit, what I may end up doing is I may put a matching stamp on here, like maybe at the top or something, which will make a kind of a nifty little finger hold, but we'll see how I feel about it. Okay, I'm going to stick this back under plastic over here and pull out my next cup. And I put it back under plastic so that all the moisture can even out. It's really important for it to do that. So we're just going to let that happen. And we're going to let that dry for a couple of days or so. It's nice. Part of the reason that I like to take a metal rib to the bottom of my cups is that it helps to smooth things out. It helps to kind of push the grog back into the clay, and it helps to compress that bottom really nicely. So that makes it a little bit smoother from the get-go, and then later on, after all the firings are completed, I don't have to take quite as much time as I normally would in sanding it. That makes me happy because sanding is another one of those just tedious tasks that you have to do when you're a potter. It's just what you got to do. What's today? The 9th. Wow. It's still the 9th, Shell. All right. Let's see. Do I want to stamp this? I guess I do. I have a stamp out here that I wanted to try out. This one's kind of fun. So I can see that. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Let's see. Just had it. Ouch. So I just really gently take my needle tool and run a little circle around it so that I know where to line this up. Because obviously you don't want your stamps going all over here, there, and everywhere. So this is what I do. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. It's funny, I get into the habit of using like the same stamps over and over. I do have like favorites. I have favorites. And that's all fine and good. I think everybody gets into those phases where they repeat things that they really, really like and they explore the patterns a little bit more. But I just want to try because that's the only way that you actually find new favorites, right? The weather outside is weather. There, that's a little better. Touch that bad boy up too. So, in case you didn't realize, these were mugs that I threw last Sunday at my last YouTube slash Twitch extravaganza. And yesterday morning, I came out to kind of check on, see how they were doing in terms of dryness and everything. They were just a teensy weensy bit too dry, so I took my handy dandy spray bottle and sprayed them down a little bit so that I could actually come back and stamp these the way I wanted to. Oops. Alrighty. That's pretty form turned out, I have to say. I'm not like, trying to pat myself on the back or anything, but I do like that form. I think it's fun. It's a little bit different from your normal cups. This is kind of how you know handmade, from everything else. Because people who make handmade stuff think about making new forms, make things. All right, so we're gonna take our nice handy dandy lumps of clay. And I think I may need just a touch more. Ow. Don't get old, kids. Important safety tip. All right. So this I'm doing a slightly different kind of handle. I'm going to do this a little bit more freely. I'm still going to compress the top end of this guy. Because of course I want that compressed and all of that. Good Lord. That is better. Yeah, I like that a little better. So I'm sort of making this square here. You can sort of, rectangular shape. So it's a little bit thinner on the sides and a little bit thicker for the handle part that you're actually going to be physically holding, you know. And these things are, again, stuff that's kind of important when you're making handles. Because you have to think about how comfortable it's going to be to hold. It's really funny. I've been running across these commercially made mugs. There's this like weird fad to have these like really thin in width but wide handles, and it's like it to me personally, my personal thing is it just doesn't feel good in my hand. I just don't like it. It's uncomfortable to hold, and I think it's nonsense, and I think they should outlaw them. That is my opinion. Okay, nobody cares about my opinion, but that's all right. What I'm saying, though, is that I really do like to make an effort to make my handles be a little bit more comfortable to hold. Cool. So I'm measuring this up again to sort of get an idea of where I want to place this thing. I think try and angle this just a hair more. Yeah, I think that's gooder. Yeah, I think that's going to work out okay. All right. Let's see where I put that stupid pen tool again, shall we? I know there's like all two of you who are watching are going like, dude, how can you keep losing the tool that was just like right there? And it's like, well, you know, it's just kind of a talent of mine. Okay, well, what's really awesome is when you got a toolbox like mine, there's always another pen tool lurking nearby. Ooh, here's what's handy too. Like that. Or lacking that, you can just use the end of a dental tool that you happen to swipe from your job when your old dental boss was retiring. But honestly, I really do want my needle tool. What the heck was that? It's just silly. I don't understand. Well, this boils down to that whole thing called screw it. Huh, weird. All right, well, whatever. All right, so let's see what we can do here. So once again, I'm going to dampen this. A little too much water in there. Just make a little bit of mud. I'm going to make a little bit of mud right here. I've got this other tool. It's a feather tool. You kind of see there what it looks like. And this is also a nice kind of fun, quick score and slip tool. So I score and slip both the handle and the cup. And with the handle, again, I don't score all the way out to the very ends because that just is asking for trouble. Because it will open up and it will crack when you're firing. And sometimes it's just so bad that you just have to ditch the whole thing. You don't want to do that. You spend all that time making it. Why would you want to do that? All right, so here we go. We're going to put that right there and just sort of give it a little bit of a twist. I'm supporting from the other side with my fingers. All right. This should be interesting. All right, pottery porn again, folks. This is probably, oh, this looks problematic, but let's find out. This bottom part is trying to pull away. I don't like that. That's not what I want. All right, let's try this again. All else fails, guess what, folks? We make another handle. It's only clay. We can do more. We can make more. We have technology. I have to say, I'm not overly impressed with the clay that I'm working with on this. It doesn't seem to have a lot of flex to it like I'm used to with my other. I'm not real fond of it, gotta say. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this for this particular purpose. I think it'll make a better sculpture clay, quite frankly, but we shall see. Let's try this again. There we go. It's a little bit more cooperative. So at this point, I'm pulling all the way down through the very end. And I'm keeping my hand nice and damp while I'm doing this. And I keep turning this because I want to make all the pulls kind of even there. One of the things I sort of like to do too is make a nice indentation in the handle if I do it. Pull the handle this particular way. I'm going to take this and dry this off just a touch. Get rid of some of the slip while it's still just hanging free there. Clean up a little bit of the bottom because I can. It's the axis is nice and open right there. And I've left the bottom part of this handle a little bit thicker. And the reason I do that is because if you want to hold it and you want to stick your finger up here, you don't burn yourself. These are the little things. It's just little stuff like that. That's actually important when you think about what you're making for people to use on an everyday basis. It's really important stuff. You got to be thoughtful about all of this. So I'm just gonna refine this a little bit. I gotta say, that one's gooder than the last one I did. I like that. I think it's kind of a, personally, this is just my thought, I think it's just sort of a nice, elegant curve that you've got to this here. You know, I just sort of dig it, if I do say so myself, which I just did. There we go. Yeah, I'm awake. So since some of this handle has gotten down into the stamp, I'm going to sort of squish that clay into that gap, because what I don't want is for crud to get in there. And start growing bacteria and garbage in there underneath, in between the handle and the body of the cup. I just don't think that would be a good idea. So I'm just going to kind of seal that little bad boy up in there. All right. I think we're good there. Well, hurrah. A couple of handles done. Yeah. And what's interesting too, that you should think about when you're making handles and stuff, is how does it look proportionately to the body of the cup? That's really important. It shouldn't be like way the heck out here and all of that, because it's uncomfortable and ungainly to use and it doesn't look good. End of story. So that's why these things are important. Is just stuff to think about when you're making clay things. think I'm going to just dry this guy upside down a little bit. So that stays where it's supposed to. Okay, so now this here thing stinks. Somehow it got bumped up against, not once, but a couple of times, which is something of a bummer. This is the bowl I made last week. Hey, look, it's tweaked. Woo! It's tweaked. But maybe I can make something out of this. I don't know. Let's see. Nah. Boop. And that's how that goes. I'm going to have to get myself another bucket so I can throw my brown clay in and get that reconstituted. Well, I guess that's going to be it for today with the fun stuff that we did. Things that came out of the kiln, pulling handles and squashing things that don't deserve to live. I hope you learned a little something, one or two things, and had a little bit of fun with this, with me. I had fun with you. And follow me on Twitter. That would be Shellhawk as the username. I'm on Instagram as Shellhawks Creations. I am on Patreon, which is also Shellhawks Creations or Shellhawk. You just look me up. Support my art. I lost my studio and I want to make my studio again. So I've got to find myself a spot to go and play in clay. My goal is to replace my kilns. I had more than one, so I need to replace kilns and buy clay and rent a space and, gosh, just set up the whole studio, buy glaze materials, all that stuff. And it takes time and effort and money and all of that. So if you, excuse me, if you become a Patreon user or a supporter of mine, you can get some pretty cool little stuff, handmade things for doing a monthly support thing. That would be a great, great Christmas gift to give me. And because then eventually you get bowls and cups and mugs and really, really cool stuff. Currently, you can buy my things on etsy.com/shop/shellhawkscreations. And you can always check in with me with my Halloween stuff and just general nonsense on Shellhawks Nest, which is my blog on Blogspot. So that's shellhawksnest.blogspot.com. Oh my goodness. Thank God I'm not on television. All right, you. Have a good one. We'll see you soon.